All right. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good. So we're on episode 2 of Contact Center Talks with Mike, powered by Noble Biz. And I thought it was natural that I bring you on as a guest. We have a lot of experience in the same space. We've worked together. I think probably between us, we're probably at I don't want to age us, but over 50 years of experience in the contact center space. So Rob is the president of Anomaly Squared. And today, really the idea is just to talk about, contact center management, maybe issues that places are running into with hybrid call centers now, retaining, keeping people. I guess the other big things would be in the culture, how do you build a culture when you're not in a call center, right? So when we kind of grew up, it was that face-to-face, the raffles, the contest, all those type of things on the floor. So kind of dive into some of that little bit, and I kind of have you jump in here, but I always look at it as we started kind of our career in the same model. It was a fundraising company. I ended up having 12 years of what I consider contact center boot camp. To where, we grew from what, 6 call centers to what was that first growth, 30 or 40?
Yeah, when I started, I think there were 4.
Okay.
I was an agent, right? And then eventually, I think it grew to almost 80 when everything sort of ended, but it was a massive growth over a 15-year period. It's impressive.
Yeah, I remember I was in Parsons and all these New Jersey guys came into Parsons. And that's right. Kansas, right? Midwest, 10,000 people. And I think I was 16. And my dad was like, hey, come check this place out. And next thing I know, they're like, hey, we want you to move to Virginia and then Texas. And, it was a whirlwind. But I look back at that time and I think I learned a lot of the basic fundamental of how I, manage contact centers nowadays. Obviously, there's tweaking and HR and some of those other things that are involved. Right. But how much of that do you, utilize still today in what you do?
I'd say quite a bit. So for me, it's interesting you were talking about the time frame of 50 years of experience. So normally when I introduce myself, I say almost 25 years. Right. But as I started thinking about it, it's actually almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
And so it's been a long time in industry. And without a question, the work I did in the fundraising industry was boot camp. But really, I would say the biggest piece that I took from that, and if you talk to people who were in the model that we came up under, it was understanding people, understanding how to manage agents, understanding how to develop coaches, understand how to sort of develop career paths for people who came into the industry like I did, which was I was an agent. I was going to college, right? It was a fantastic job for me. I worked 16 to 20 hours a week. And over time, you begin to understand that, wow, in that 15-year period, the more I interacted with sort of the agents, the more I began to understand that they are the sort of launching point for everything that we do, right? And so what I use today is no different than it was 20 years ago in regards to managing agents, making sure they have a career path, empowering them, communicating with them. It's still vital. And I think I've carried it with me for the last 30 years, to be frank.
Yeah. One thing that I remember through those days was just the duplication, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, we went from when I joined 6 centers to 30 some, and we were promoting people that, quite frankly, even myself, that had zero management experience.
Yeah.
We're hiring people normally older and probably more experienced than we did. And so, that duplication piece of it, training others to do what you did and what you excelled at, was just a key in my success and how I was able to go from the agent to the supervisor to the center manager to the regional, and I think you were even a national manager. That duplication, now that you're president of Anomaly, and we'll dive into who Anomaly is and what you do, do you still see that duplication every day? Do you still feel like you got those, people that you're trying to, create that duplication of yourself now at a higher level.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah, I think, two components I took from Civic was, I don't know if you remember, but the coaching process, right? That's a coaching process that you and I learned late 90s, early 2000s. We still use it today. It's an important.
It's embedded. Meet, create,
exactly, right? But I think most of your traditional call centers like to promote from within. I think the part of that is because somebody who's a manager, who's been an agent, just has a different feel, different understanding, different level of empathy, I think, for the agents, because you've been there, you've done it. And so those are super important. That duplication, when I was an agent, the first thing that one of my manager told me is, hey, you're no longer by yourself. I want you to make 12 U's, right? And so I think that's the way you approach every sort of level of management, right? Ultimately, you're hoping to impart some sort of leadership or some sort of, coaching process that, regardless of the division they work within, whether it's finance, whether it's human resources, whether it's, the IT department, that coaching process and duplication is still critical to your company growing and evolving.
Yeah, I agree completely at every level. So let's dive into Anomaly. So you're the president of Anomaly Squared.
Yep.
What is Anomaly? What do you guys do for your clients? Kind of walk me down that.
Absolutely. So Anomaly is a contact center solution. We have, I want to say, a little north of 300 remote agents working in 9 different states right now. Our primary, the 3 verticals that we've consistently worked within, over the last 11 years, we partner with lending institutions, insurance agencies, and a large portion of what we do is patient recruitment for clinical trials, right? And so that's a big piece to what is important to us every single day. Recently, I think we've realized that we need to continue to grow and diversify. So we've started taking sort of appointment scheduling calls for customers. It's been an interesting sort of turn. Those are more inbound, right? You're processing, you become more of a customer service agent than sort of a sales agent. And so I think it's been critical to us, but it's something that we really enjoy. We also have some nearshore and offshore partners where we have some agents in the Philippines, and some of those agents are also in Tijuana. That's basically us in a nutshell. I think we've got, I want to say, 15 operations managers, and then our brick and mortar center is here in Greensboro, 180 seats, but it's all remote now, right? Everybody's at home. So it's still beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but we're not using it at all. Everything is now, every one of our agents is now remote.
So that's intriguing. So would there be a case? So it sounds like you're kind of a BPO. So you have some verticals that you focus in.
Yeah.
Is there a case where maybe you had a client and they said, hey, Rob, listen, due to security reasons or due to our comfortable, ability to bring you on, that we need 40, 50 agents within a brick and mortar? Is that something that you guys would entertain and bring back in? Or are you saying now, hey, we've seen it, agents are more happy at home, or this is our model now?
Well, I think right now we are remote, but you never say never, right? If a client came on, great partner, we thought would be a lasting relationship, it would definitely be open. I mean, the seats are available downstairs, so we'd never turn it away, But I will say our agents are happy at home. When 2020 hit, I was concerned about the transition. How do you communicate? What's the culture? You mentioned that earlier. What's the engagement? Are they, what are they doing when they're at home? We can't see them. Because you and I, for 20 years or more, we were in a physical building working with agents. You had what felt like more control. But I think what we're seeing is there's an even greater commitment from call center agents who are working from home than I anticipated. I think they appreciate it. They're saving money, just from a commute standpoint. It's really been a promising and encouraging sort of transition for us to go from that brick and mortar center to working from home and doing it successfully.
So let's dive into the successfully part, right? So I deal with contact centers all over. And so I usually run into 2 ones that are just like you. They say, hey, our agents are happier at home. We're growing the remote model. We can dive into how you build your culture and that type of stuff. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
So now let's go into the other one is, you know what? I'm struggling with onboarding people with remote. I'm struggling with the performance loss. Maybe when they were in the center, I was able to run contests and raffles and these other things. And maybe it's a 10 or 15% increase, but that could be their margin. You know, so what are you guys doing at Anomaly to address maybe some of those concerns that other places are having when it's just taking longer to get somebody up to speed, or they see a drop in performance? How are you guys, overcoming some of that?
Well, a couple of things. You mentioned culture. And when I think culture, Mike, I think of a couple of things, right? I think of engagement. Are the employees engaged? And what are we doing on our side to promote that engagement? Meaning making sure that those lines of communication are really strong. And then it's inclusion, right? So you want your employees to feel like they're included in all the processes. They're included in the greater mission of what you're doing. That's extremely important, that whatever you're doing every single day from an ops standpoint, you're keeping those two things in mind, making sure the engagement is there, making sure the agents who are working from home, because they can't see us, they're not there. We have no idea. I mean, when you're in brick and mortar center, you can see clues, right? You can see posture. Am I sitting? Am I slumping? Am I frowning, right? Well, you can't see that. You can't do that anymore now that they're working from home. So you really got to clue in your managers to the different components of what tells you is happening with your agent. Barge and whisper features are critical to these processes. Your ears and listening to and being able to communicate is really, really big. And what you mentioned something else as far as just how you onboard. One of the things that we found has really worked is we developed an LMS system, which is a learning management system. So sort of takes everything that we do and takes them through the steps remotely, right? They watch videos, there's interactions, there's quizzes, there are things that you couldn't do, when you're in a building and you're training 15 people, you're all in one room. Well, now they're not. It's through Zoom, it's through different features like that. But I will say the implementation of that LMS, where there's a structured outline of training throughout the course of the first week of an employee's sort of onboarding process, it has changed our retention significantly in the last couple of years. Obviously, when we went remote, Mike, we weren't good. We didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we're training people, we're having Zoom calls, people are dropping left or right. We had no clue. But guess what? What is the saying is, necessity is the mother of all invention. Mm-hmm. We realized really quick, if we're going to be good, we need to come up with something that improves that onboarding process. If you can get your hands on some sort of LMS system and sort of outline the training process of what you think you would need if you were a new person to start working with you, you'll be successful.
So that's awesome. So basically what I think happened, and I was a part of that in 2020, is everybody tried to train reps remotely like they trained inside the facility.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
And that's where the disconnect was. What I'm hearing you say is develop a system where people learn remotely. They develop remotely.
That's
and
right.
Look at it as not as a stopgap, which I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, without question.
How do we just make sure our clients get what they need to get done today?
Yeah.
And so I love that. And really, you're just creating the environment now around what you said. We're a hybrid, we're a remote company now, to where we have to create our processes, our learning experiences, our culture around this remote versus, where I think a lot of companies are failing is they've had this tried and true onboarding, this tried and true training. And now how do we develop that into remote? And what I'm hearing you say is you got to re-engineer it.
You have to re-engineer it. And the beautiful thing with LMS is it can be used as continued education. So normally in an office, if we follow the coaching process, I sit down with you and I work with you. We take you through those steps, right? But I can see you. We can practice. We can do all those things. What we've realized is that you're limited in what you can coach, right? So if I barge in and we have a conversation, or we'll even do some sort of Zoom communication, which was a big help to us. But if they have something they can go back to, when your son plays football, I think, right?
Yeah.
The basics of football is tackling and blocking.
Correct.
The basics of good customer service, the basics of good call center performance is how do your agents sound and what they learned within the first week of training, right? And so if you have this LMS system and you go through this coaching process, now I can point you back to the module that is specific to what I just trained you on. So I'm reinforcing everything you learned right from the get-go. And what we found is retention of training improved drastically. We saw improvement remotely go up significantly.
So that's a great nugget. So if anybody's listening out there at LMS, look at that process, re-engineer your training. The other thing I picked up on, and it was just slightly, and you were talking about barge and those type of mode and training your ear. It's almost like when we learned how to make calls, right? So are you training coaches to coach, develop, maybe adapt the way that they coach into this remote process? What are they listening for? What are they looking at? Is it similar to a phone call where you're trying to understand within, 5 or 10 seconds who this person is, where they're hesitating? Is it similar to where the coaches now have to use some of those phone techniques in order to pick up on agents and their moods and that type of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think listening is the tell-all, whether it's through recordings or live, right? And I don't think that's very different. But what you lose is when you're inside of a center, I can be listening to you, but also hear what's going on behind me, right?
Right.
And so some of the things that we really try to practice is touch and go techniques. We had a call with one of our customers a couple of weeks ago, and the purpose of the call was they want to understand why we were so good, what separated us, what made us. I know. And so and my exact response to them after we talked about the coaching process is I think it's our touch points, right? We want to touch the agent as frequently as possible and as positively as possible. So, I think the difference between in a center versus remote is you have to really shower people with positive energy because you can't see them, right? And so you got to lift them up. You got to make them feel good about what's going on. You also have to be critical, right? I read a book. It's called The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis.
Okay.
And in that book, they talked about the value of criticism. And it was specific to airline pilots who were learning to fly in simulators, right? What they found undoubtedly was that the pilots, when they messed up, right, had a mistake, when they received criticism, their scores when they went back into the flight simulator increased.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones who were positive, oh, you're okay, it's going to be okay, their performance decreased over time. Mm-hmm. And so, as well as I do, the only way you get better is if you have somebody tell you what you need to improve on, right?
Right.
So you really have to do that. But at the same time, I think that positive energy, barge in modes, whisper modes, whatever they might be, use that as an opportunity to communicate something positively. The other piece is, how do you document training? What do you do, right? Do you send email? Do you have a form? Whatever that looks like. And what we found really matters, Mike, is the documentation and the communication. The more positive it is, the better we do. And it's the old saying of praise in public, reprimand in private, right? You got to do both. Yes, exactly right. You have to do both, but you got to really be sort of aware and really make it a valid point for your coaches to really shower them with praise at all times.
So that kind of leads to the next topic is agents have a lot of power nowadays in a call center, right? And in the way that I see it, number one, we need them more than they need us in some of these environments. Number two, it's recruiting's getting harder. It's now, when I started remote for FLS and some of these other companies, this was 10 years ago, 8 years ago. I did it because I wanted to find pockets of people.
Right.
And I didn't want to have to pay large amount of money. But guess what? Everybody's hiring remote now.
Correct.
So now you got this challenge. You're in Greensboro. You're still hiring all over the place. I'm sure you're still looking for those pockets. You're still looking for people in areas that want to do a good job for you. They want to be successful, and you might not have to compete with 10 other places. But what has changed? What has changed in the recruitment approach to find new people? And then how are you retaining those people so you're not having to, and call center's always been this churn and burn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what are you doing a little different that maybe other people can pick up on?
Well, to start, I'll say this: whether you're remote or you're in a building, recruiting has its challenges, right? If you're in a brick and mortar center, I think there's a shelf life in an area of, say, 4 to 5 years to really actively recruit top talent, right? Once you hit that mark, you start to say, ooh, I'm no longer getting 25 interviews a day. I'm getting 2 or 3. So if your internal systems are set up to support it, meaning remote, it actually has been a blessing for us.
Okay.
You're mentioning the pockets. I'll say this, and not to, recruiting is a numbers game, right? Mm-hmm. The difference now than what maybe it was 2 years ago is I may have to go through 500 applications to get 5 employees. But there are resources out there that can allow you to do it. There are systems that can recruit, for example, Workable, that you can use to find those pockets throughout the United States. And if you have good recruiters, you'll find people. Yes, competition is great, but guess what, Mike? We've been dealing with competition everywhere we went. I mean, we weren't the only call center in town when we brick and mortar, right? There were 2 or 3, sometimes 5 that we were competing with. So the challenges, the recruiting challenges really haven't changed, but you just got to understand it's a numbers game, and you got to be willing to invest maybe into an extra recruiter, maybe spend a little bit more as far as what your ads are through, different recruiting, Career Builder, Indeed, things like that. It's just simply the best thing, the biggest nugget I could give to somebody or sort of takeaway. Understand it's a numbers game. You're not going to change it, and so you got to attack it from that standpoint.
It's like fishing in an ocean versus a pond, right?
That 100%. That's right.
That's the way I kind of try to look at it. When I went remote, I shut down 3 centers, and I said, hey, you guys have been in these towns for 10, 15 years.
Right.
Just like you were talking about. There was a shelf life.
Yeah.
You're just turning through the same people, rehires, so on and so forth. So you're completely right. We hired 3 recruiters, 3 more than we already had.
Yeah.
Because the good news is we had a ton of applications, but the bad news was we didn't have enough people to call on these.
Yeah, it's kind of like leads, right? You buy all these leads and then you don't have anybody to work them. So it's the same thing. You have all these applications, but you have nobody helping you through the process of clearing, finding the highest quality.
Now, the big question is, I'm a call center. I'm a BPO. I have my agents remote, Next year, are we all bringing everybody back? Is it going to be a case, or is this the new normal?
In my professional opinion, I think remote work for call center agents is the new normal. Okay. I think it's what everybody's. So you just got to you better get good at it, right? You just understand it. And I'll say, you mentioned earlier that the agents kind of have the power, and they do. The reason is because now, again, it's not just 3 or 4 companies that they can apply for. It's 20. Right, a company that's based out of California can recruit somebody here in Greensboro. So how do I ensure? You mentioned earlier retention. How do I ensure they stick around? It goes back to culture. It goes back to engagement. It goes back to inclusion. Mike, I started interesting. Last week, I started kind of a town hall with some of the agents, and so as president of the company, we don't get better unless I get better, right? And so, what better way to understand what's going on within your company just to have 5, maybe 6 of your call center agents hop on a Zoom call. And after I introduced myself, I said, tell me how we can get better. And I just shut up.
Yeah.
I just stayed quiet and let them talk. And I was amazed at, one, how people found us. Everybody's got their story, right? But I was really impressed with our agents' commitment to want to succeed and do well for our customers. And so, not that we haven't seen that, but in a remote world, you kind of wonder, are they losing that, right? Because you're not interacting. You don't necessarily see, what is Anomaly doing day in and day out, where if they were in the building, they could see us, right? They understand what projects are coming in. They don't know it. I was so impressed with how important it was for them to do well. And I was really amazed by how much information they were willing to share. And it really helped me. So now I can take all that information back and I can go to my different staff members and say, hey, I spoke to our agents. This is what they really like about us, but also here's some of the things that we can do better, right? And that's that inclusion piece that's important. That's that engagement piece that is important. And that was a 30-minute conversation. And I really think that it meant a lot to them. It meant a lot, it probably meant more to me than it did them, to be frank.
So I'm assuming this will be a process that you're going to do moving
every
forward.
week, every Friday. Yeah. 3 to 5 new agents every single week. I'm just going to spend time with them. I'm going to listen. Right. I mean, if I, and again, I mean, as a president of a company, who's telling me what I'm doing right or wrong other than clients?
Sure.
Right. This is an opportunity for me to hear, okay, infrastructurally, cultural wise, engagement wise, training wise, script wise, everything. I said, let me have it, tell me everything. And it was a great conversation.
No, that's awesome. It's obviously speaking to what you're trying to build, right? You're trying to build this culture. You're trying to build this process. And that's that feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Now you've created the feedback loop that says, is everything that we're doing, is it working?
Yeah.
Or are we spending all this time and resources and doing this? And, they didn't even bring that up. Like that process, maybe you're running a big raffle or something like that. So, it is kind of scary though, right? So like you got on that call and you were like, oh boy, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. If you don't hear about it, maybe you don't have to do anything about it.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it is good as a leader. That's outstanding that you were, number one, you wanted that feedback because you felt like you're at a point that you can act on it. Don't get the feedback if you're not going to do anything, because then it's going to be worse, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The president of the company, he didn't do anything.
Yeah, nothing changed.
Yeah, so that's good. I think, and this is me, I'm in the technology space. I'm not running call centers anymore. But the way that I look at it is I think this is outstanding that agents have a little bit more power. They have a little bit bigger seat at the table. And I think ultimately what it's going to teach the contact center space is going to help them grow and be able to be not that turnover machine or that, that dead end job or that job that you do just to, make some money before you go on to your next job. Right. So in me looking on the outside in, I think this is kind of a blessing. I think remote and COVID could be a blessing for call centers in a couple round. One, technology side. So before COVID, people still had kind of premise solutions and, they didn't really worry about the cloud and all these different channels and all this type of stuff. So COVID kind of pushed people into the technology space that said, hey, maybe we need to look at our technology stack.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe we don't need 5 guys running a in-premise solution to keep our, you know what I mean? So anyway, so I think there's a lot of lessons to learn when we go back and look at the transition of what COVID and how it kind of pushed the industry forward. We just named a few: recruiting, hiring. Yep. I guarantee you get better talent now than we ever did 4 years ago, that we ever did 5 years ago when we were only within the boundaries of our location. Yeah. Now the talent, it's all over.
It is. It is. And, we were talking about it a little earlier when you were sort of bound by the location, there is a shelf life, right? Now there's not. There's 50 or more states you can recruit in. There's people all over the country that have experience, have call center experience. And you can lean on those practices, right? I mean, I was amazed, the six people that are on the call, every one of them had call center experience before they came to us. And so, I mean, it was amazing. We were on the call. I had somebody from Texas. I had somebody from Georgia. I had 2 people from Kansas and somebody from Greensboro and West Virginia. So, it was just great to see the eclectic group, right? And they, just amazed by, their depth of knowledge and understanding of what it takes to be a good call center agent. By the way, you mentioned, I think on one of your live shows or something you post where, you're obsessed with your customers or your customers were everything. Amazon's principles, their first principle says customer obsession, right? And I think, we were talking earlier about what makes Anomaly good. Well, obviously we're obsessed with our customers, but I want to say this too. It's the call center agents, right? Without call center agents, it just doesn't matter what any of your departments are doing. It doesn't matter how many clients you have. If you do not have good call center agents, you're done. You might as well just fold up shop, close the doors, and go sit at home, because it's not going to work.
And think about the culture now you can build. Before, managers dictated culture in a call center. Let's
Correct.
just face it, right?
Yeah.
So if you had a manager or the leader or the president or the call center manager, they created the culture because they dictated everything, right? It was fun. You wanted to hire that. He had good retention. He had a good energy. If he was a browbeater, then your agents most likely browbeated on the phone. So now, just like you said, Texas and California, I mean, you're bringing so many different personalities within the team that, guess what? We call people all across the U.S., all across the world.
Yep.
And so if you're creating this diversity in your culture and you're creating this environment, you're going to have better agents. You're going to have better, your clients are going to appreciate what you can do, because you're not just a one-trick pony, or you're not just in this vertical. So I think it's outstanding. And one of the pieces that when I came to Noble Biz, it was really refreshing was the make a promise, keep a promise. And I see a lot of that in Anomaly. I see a lot of that with what you do with your clients. I mean, it's a case where we may have to take a loss, right? We told them we were going to do this. We told them that we were going to make this happen. And so we made this promise to this client. And yes, some of this other stuff came up, but we still have to complete the mission, right? We still have to be able to take care of them. And that's where clients, I think, appreciate that you're just not another BPO that's going to charge them their invoice and away it goes, right?
Yeah, it's definitely trickle down. I think we take, our internal sort of motto is win together, right? So when we have conversation with customers, our goal isn't just to take a little bit of money and run. I mean, we get satisfaction knowing that we helped other companies succeed. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Sure. We got a little bit of time left. Let's dive into a little bit on just the future, right? So this is one conversation that I have a lot with my current clients. So you look at the numbers, and right now 70% of all the traffic in the call center is still voice, right? And so we're talking about omni-channel, we're talking about SMS and email and Facebook and so on and so forth. Now, here's the other elephant in the room. AI, right? So I go to these shows, and there's 30 AI booths within the show. So a couple questions. One, is voice dead? So when you look in the market and you're seeing all this, they're assuming that people don't want to talk on the phones. They're assuming that people that voice, even 5 years from now, is just all our call centers are going to be ran by bots, or they're going to be ran by AI engines. What do you say?
I think you said it. 70% still result in voice, right? I think there are a lot of good solutions out there that provide some sort of AI sort of opportunity with text and chat. But me personally, I'll just use me as a personal sort of project here. If I go online and I'm looking for something, I'll interact with that bot. I'll interact with text or chat, whatever that, but it almost always ends up progressing to a live conversation. I think there's something to all of this. There's still comfort in speaking to somebody. I think because you just get a different feeling for it. What I see right now, everybody talks AI, but what is AI, right? Is it really AI? Is it really a machine learning opportunity, right? Where there's a full-on conversation. I don't think we're there yet. It could be, but I think the omni-channel, the ability to use text and chat is important. But you better be able to talk live, and you need to have agents available, because when I think there's limitations to the solutions that text or chat can provide somebody, and you've got to have somebody in the back end who can actually have a conversation.
So when I look at it, and you brought it up, let's look at the agent's point of view. Okay. In my mind, an agent doesn't want to spend their time dealing with repeating back account information. They don't want to spend their time with telling somebody some simple thing that they can just look up.
Yeah.
They want to spend their time with solving problems. They want to spend their time with selling or guiding or creating something that they feel like they accomplished something for the day. Could you imagine sitting on the calls? We both were in a very heavy sales environment where you get the satisfaction of closing a deal or whatever.
Right.
You knew you did a good job.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I think where I see AI and technology playing its role in the agent experience is being able to position agents to have those better phone calls, to have those more informed, conversations that they feel like that, that they're doing their job.
Yeah, they're closing. They're doing something. Yeah, they're getting satisfaction out. Interesting. So Anomaly Square, one of the services we provide is warming up leads for people who are closers. Why?
Yep.
Because that's where they want to spend their time. They want to spend their time closing on, great leads, high intent leads, and cold calling and things of that nature are pretty tough. So yes, you're absolutely 100% right. You've got to have those agents on that side who can spend their time doing it. And if you can have, I don't know if you're going to get into it, but the omni-channel solution where
Sure.
you can have that communication quickly, the text, chats, whatever, and then give yourself the opportunity to take those escalated calls where there's an increased chance of solving somebody's problem or closing a sale. That's ideal, right? Where it can all be done in one system.
Sure. Yeah. I think technology. So if we go back and look at just general technology, not in call centers, let's not look at technology as a whole because it's crazy from the time we were kids to where it's at now. So if we look at technology in the contact center space, when we were up and coming, it was a dialer in the center, right? And so you had it in your center and you did the punch boards. It was copper. You heard words like copper lines and E1s. And so we look at that. And that was, the predictive dialer was a very big piece of technology for many years. 20 years, the predictive dialer dominated the space in sales, outbound, fundraising, those type of things. So that was kind of I consider the first big jump into the technology space, predictive dialing, right? And then I think the next one is how do we get multiple call centers connected to the same dialer, right? So now I have 5 call centers and I want those 5 different talent pieces to be able to dial on the same leads or to be able to dial on the same thing. So that's kind of was the next step we seen. They did it with routers and all this other type of stuff to be able to have multiple call centers on maybe the same piece of technology, but it still lived in somebody's colo or something. So then the hosted system came out, right? Where you had the ability to do a web, you just logged into the internet, you pinged up usually through a soft phone, so on and so forth. So that's my transition from voice, right? Voice did all that. Now we're going into other channels. So we're going into SMS, we're going into texting and chat and Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. So when that first launched and those channels became important enough where the call center said, we can make some money. We can make some money in these areas. Everybody bolted on, right? So they got an SMS solution. They got a chat solution. They still had their dialer. Okay, so everybody bolted on and it was good. We had this. Now tell me if I'm not wrong. The way that I see the future, and especially where omni-channel comes in, is at a point we're going to want to know what is the preferred method that we need to communicate with this person, right? So if we're just dialing them all day, every day, and they never pick up the phone and we send them an email and they respond every time, you run an operations. Is email cheaper than an agent calling them every day?
Without question.
Same thing with SMS. Same thing with, so in my mind, where the next phase of technology is almost in a way that we understand the preferred method of communication. If you say, Mike, if you call me, I'm never going to pick up the phone, but if you send me a text, we'll have a conversation, and it may lead to a phone call, right? It may lead to a different type of interaction, but I know that this is the way I communicate. The reason why I believe this is because, like you, I have kids at all different age groups.
That's right.
And my oldest son is never text anymore. It's like a Snapchat or a Facebook Messenger, forget the phone call. If I call him, he thinks it's mom's in a crash. Right?
Yeah.
And then you got the other kids all the way down to my youngest son, which is only internet communication. So how does contact centers understand that, these preferred method of communications is coming, and how do they understand that voice is still the ultimate, but how do they start getting ready for this? It's not here yet, but how are they going to start getting ready for these other channels?
Well, I think right now what you see is each one of those means of communication is segmented, right? So you're calling on one platform, you're emailing on another platform, your SMS and text is over here, and you're sort of jumping all back and forth. Well, really, we were talking about culture and retention. That creates some difficulties for the agents, right? Especially the ones that are working from home. A lot of them only have one screen. So finding a good omni-channel solution, that one that can encompass and have all of those and gives you ability to find out what their preferred method is. But also, Mike, it's going to improve retention, right? Because now if I'm an agent, I'm a call center agent, I'm working from home, I understand the best way to communicate with that person. Right. Number one, it's all in one space. I'm not having to jump back and forth between browsers. So my experience is now better because, one, I've got one system. Two, I'm only communicating the way that person wants me to communicate with them.
Yeah, right? You're not just beating down their door.
That's right. The odds of me closing a sale or whatever that might be, having high customer satisfaction scores, it increases tremendously. Now, because I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to call you. It's like the square peg round hole thing, right?
Yeah. Well, you get it, because when I have this conversation with people and I tell them that their technology can increase their retention, their eyes roll in the back of their head.
No, they're
crazy.
They're missing it. It's a hidden bonus to what a call center needs to. What it matters. It's going to change your retention rates, especially long term.
I agree. So we went over AI, went over recruiting, really looking at the future. Is there anything out there? I mean, I know you're doing outbound calling. Is there anything out there that you see coming, or is there any foresight that you would see that, you would advise people, to be ready for, besides another, catastrophic COVID 9.9 or whatever?
Yeah, I think stay on top of legislation, stay on top of TCPA regulations. I think that's going to consistently change as the means of communication changes. So do those laws, the regulations. And so I don't necessarily know that there's one coming or what that would look like, but just be on your toes and be ready for that. And you've got to make sure that you have a good relationship with whomever your dialing manager, your dialing software is, so that communication is seamless and you can be ahead of the game.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. There's laws, and then so you have nationwide legislation.
Yeah, and then
now you have these state legislation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, obviously, you probably have somebody internally that sees that, manages that type of stuff. But that's really good. I mean, you could get your business shut down pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you call the wrong place, the wrong person at the wrong time.
Absolutely. Yeah. States like Florida are tough.
So if anybody wants to reach out, maybe they're looking for a new client. Maybe they love the culture and the type of things that you guys are bringing to the table at Anomaly. How do they get a hold of you?
Email me directly, bear like the aspirin, @anomaliesquare.com.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time today, Rob. It was great catching up, and great. I hope everybody learned something today. Looks like you guys are really working to build an awesome culture, and do some things a little different. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Bye.